Moment. The highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, there's a megaphone going on there saying that we're unfriendly press, which is interesting. I expose the Oxford Palestine mob. Do you think this might be a bit fascist? Is this a little bit fascist?
Palestine!
No? OK.
Palestine!
It's almost like they're the fascists, and
Can see a changed Labour Party. They can see that we're fundamentally and unrecognisably different from the Labour Party of 2019.
Will Keir Starmer embrace extremists just to win votes? He's already sold his principles down the river with Elphick.
Keir Starmer, Labour have changed, and I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country, and that's why I'm so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Does look like she's blinking for help there, doesn't it? Stay tuned, though, because we've got a big story about Labour coming at 10:30 p.m. and an exclusive. This jihadi is back walking the streets. Elsewhere, though,
Free Palestine!
Israel is booed at Eurovision. Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Lord Sean Bailey and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Lars are on my panel this evening, and on your marks, get ready. Tell me what's wrong here, OK? Keep your eyes peeled. I'll reveal all shortly. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is Labour still full of extremists? Next.
Hello there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has cautioned the Bank of England against cutting interest rates too quickly. The bank's decided to hold borrowing costs at the same level, 5.25% for a sixth time. But Governor Andrew Bailey suggested a cut could come as soon as next month. However, Jeremy Hunt's urged the bank not to take risks with inflation.
I welcome the fact the Bank of England's obviously thought about this very hard. They take this decision independently, and I would much rather that they waited until they're absolutely sure inflation is on a downward trajectory and rushed into a decision that they had to reverse at a later stage. What we want is sustainably low interest rates, and I think what's encouraging is that the Bank of England governor, for the first time, has expressed real optimism that we're on that path.
Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators have gathered in the Swedish city of Malmo to protest against Israel competing in the Eurovision Song Contest. Protesters dressed in Palestinian colours packed the city's historic market square before a planned march through Malmo. Now, during a dress rehearsal last night, crowds could be heard booing Israel's performance by Eden Golan. The second semi-final of the contest is underway. The Foreign Secretary says Britain will not follow the US in withholding arms from Israel if a full-scale invasion of Rafah goes ahead. His comments come hours after President Joe Biden vowed to cut supplies if the southern Gazan city is attacked. Lord Cameron says there's a fundamental difference because UK sales are much smaller in scale and are policed by strict rules, but added the government would not support an invasion of Rafah unless it saw a plan to protect civilians. Speaking at the National Cyber Security Centre, the Foreign Secretary also urged fellow NATO members to increase their defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. More than 9,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats this year. Official figures show 250 people made the journey in two small boats since Monday, taking the tally for 2024 to almost 8,800. However, GB News can confirm another 3 small boats arrived on Thursday, and making the current total 35% higher than at the same time last year. It comes after a Home Office U-turn on the publication of the number of small boat migrants being prevented from making the illegal journey by French police. And FIFA's been threatened with legal action if it does not reschedule next year's expanded Club World Cup. Manchester City and Chelsea are now taking part in the 32-team competition. It's scheduled for the United States in June and July. However, the International Players Union and the World Leagues organisation, which includes the Premier League, have written to FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, saying the sports new schedule is beyond saturation and will cause economic harm for domestic leagues and also poses a significant threat to players. No issue or no comment yet from FIFA. That's all the news for the moment. You can sign up to GB News Alerts for more on all of our stories. More details on the website. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome along. It's 9:05. I'm Patrick Christys. Now, Keir Starmer will be willing to sell this country out to the extremists if it gets him a few more votes, in my view. It hasn't taken long for the mask to slip. It's worth remembering that the Labour Party is only the second political party to be found to have acted unlawfully by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the other being the BNP. Keir Starmer says it's changed. Well, it hasn't. The mask slipped when Wes Streeting tweeted this about Conservative voters, didn't he? A win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over. Starmer stayed silent. Why did he stay silent? Yes, well, could it be because Wes Streeting is quite possibly going to lose his seat to an independent, pro-Palestine candidate? That's exactly what I think could happen. His majority is 5,218. The size of the Muslim population in his seat, 25,743. That is 27.3% of his electorate. Goodbye, Wes. So, Starmer can't condemn his comments. It's weak. In London, Starmer kept his mouth shut when Sadiq Khan launched another dog whistle attack on the chief rabbi. He said that the reason the rabbi had called him out for his Gaza ceasefire stance was essentially because he was a Muslim, saying that the rabbi didn't call out Andy Burnham because he's not called Ahmed Barani. He's now apologised. But Starmer didn't condemn it. Why not? Because he wants to win. Keir Starmer has got Jess Phillips piping up now, saying she's worried about losing her seat because of the party's stance on Gaza. She's got a majority, apparently, of over 10,000 in Birmingham Yardley. But the percentage of the Muslim vote in her constituency is a whopping 37.4%. That's around 32,000 people. So what happens? The newly elected mayor for Palestine, West Midlands, yeah, that's right, immediately tweets, an Israeli offensive in Rafah must not go ahead. Immediate ceasefire. There's some other stuff on there as well. I mean, look, Birmingham Council has just gone bankrupt. But yeah, you focus on the important local stuff, Mayor. You've got nutters like this.
Horton, Great Horton, Manningham, Heaton, City Ward, and Collar. I'm going to tell you something here. This is a clear message to Starmer. Bradford has rejected Labour. It's rejected Zionism. And this is a message to you, Nash Shah and Imran Hussain. We are coming for you in the general election. Anyone that stands with Zionism, we're coming after you. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine! Wonder if he knows what day of the week the local bin collection is. But anyway, Keir Starmer will do whatever it takes in order to win him and people like him back. And if you don't believe me, just look at what he's been willing to do with Natalie Elphicke. This woman is essentially to the right of Genghis Khan, OK? She's been criticised for slamming her husband's sex assault victims. She's also been told to F off by the Shadow Chancellor. She's been absolutely caning Starmer, his party, every Labour MP and everything they've ever done. And yet, just to try to score a cheap point against Rishi Sunak, Starmer was willing to throw his arms around her, welcome her in, and then send out the swivel-eyed Annalise Dodds onto the media round today to say how Elphicke is a good fit for the Labour Party. I mean, here's the National's front page. There you go. Look, Labour values. Being suspended from the Commons for trying to influence a judge in her ex-husband's sexual assault trial, backing Johnson and Truss, supporting Israel's bombardment of Gaza, attacking trade unions over P&O firing scandals, scaremongering about vulnerable asylum seekers, and finally blaming Rashford's miss on free school meals campaign. It's interesting, isn't it, that Starmer was willing to just allow someone with those views into his party. Starmer's already turned a blind eye to sectarianism. In Rochdale, he had no qualms sending out his shadow cabinet to go into bat for their candidate after he claimed that Israel had allowed the October 7 attacks. Keir Starmer has no problems standing idly by while his lot throw around fake Islamophobia claims, call normal people white supremacists and flirt with anti-Semitism at the pro-Palestine rallies. I don't think he'd have any problem selling Britain down the river for a few more votes, which, by the way, he doesn't even need. And I think that makes it even worse, doesn't it? But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I am joined by the Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. We've got Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Alison, should we be worried about Keir Starmer being prepared to embrace sectarianism?
Yeah, I think we should be very worried. I think we could be looking at the gradual Islamification of our country. We do not want a bunch of Muslim councillors dictating British foreign policy. That's a basic fact. And what we saw, as you said, lots of local elections, Muslims cross with Labour for Starmer not taking a more anti-Israeli line, defect to the Greens. I think it's a lovely fact, Patrick, that all the hardline Muslims are in the Green Party, plus the trans women. So we're very much looking forward to that party conference, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Should be a meeting of minds. But
I'll be there, by the way,
but
for that.
basically
I want to see that with my own eyes.
You'll be in there. But this guy...
I'm not sure you'll be allowed in, Patrick. I predict you'll be banned.
This guy, Mohsin Ali, wins East Leeds, where people are concerned about what people are concerned about in every local area in the country, potholes, planning permission, you know, dustbin collection. But no, Mr Ali wins, shouts Allahu Akbar, God is great, and then says this win is for Gaza. You know, do the people of Leeds think Rafa might be the tennis player? They certainly don't know where it is in the Gaza Strip. So, yes, I'm very, very worried. And I think Starmer has said, oh, you know, we must regain trust. What does that mean? Bending to the will of people who are using now their voting muscle to affect us.
Look, so, Matthew, you're furiously shaking your head there. I mean, where was Starmer on, you know, Sadiq Khan's latest outburst at the chief rabbi, or West Streeting calling a load of people white supremacists? He keeps quiet because he needs the votes, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, Patrick, I'm a bit confused because you're trying to have your cake and eat it. Yeah. You're trying to simultaneously claim that Labour's in hock to Islamist extremists on the one hand, and yet you're criticising the defection of Natalie Elphick on the other hand, who's many things.
I'm saying he's got no principles. I'm saying that he's willing to do whatever it takes to get votes, and those two go hand in hand.
It's absolutely not true. I mean, the footage you saw there of the guy in Bradford, his whole point was that he was opposing the Labour Party. He was nothing to do with the Labour Party because he was criticising the Labour Party. We've seen this week this group issue a Muslim vote issue a list of 18 demands, and you say, will Keir Starmer give in to them? The answer is no, and you've seen that already. Because his response is, I've spoken to Keir's office, and their response is absolutely clear. Yes, of course, always have conversations with people from communities of all different types, but no to giving in to demands. You know, engaging, yes, being held to ransom, no. Well, I mean, Keir Starmer hasn't personally addressed the 18 demands because he's had other things to talk about. I mean, if somebody asked him, I'm sure he will.
OK, but Shawnee, you know, he also didn't address West Streeting's tweet about Susan Hall. He also didn't address Sadiq Khan's comments there about the chief rabbi. He also didn't really address for quite a while, far too late anyway, what was going on in Rochdale. And I just wonder really whether or not he would be willing to embrace sectarianism if it meant that he got votes.
But that's a problem. He didn't step up and answer them. And if you're a neutral, you'll be sat there thinking, OK, if you don't embrace these things, I need to hear it from you, not from your office. You're trying to be the Prime Minister of the country. I think what we're seeing now is Palestine in particular has become a double-edged sword for Labour. They're very pro that, and that's good. They want to see a ceasefire, don't want to see people hurt, and we all agree that. I certainly do. But because they've wibbled and wobbled, certainly on a local level, now people are saying, we reject you. And what's important about what that councillor said, it's not that he doesn't want to have anything to do with the Labour Party. He said he's rejected them. So he thought that Labour were going to do a particular thing around it, and they're not. And
I don't know why he thought that, because there's never been any indication.
I'll tell you why, because they haven't been clear. They haven't been clear. There's been lots...
We've been so clear, Sean. We've lost 70,000 votes in the West Midlands. We nearly lost the mayoralty against it. And you're saying, Susan... Let's remind ourselves, Susan Hall got hammered last week, Sean.
Matthew,
your candidate lost.
That's different. The public have been clear. His community have been clear about what they want. The Labour Party has not.
It's been absolutely clear, Sean. That's why
they tried to play both sides.
This is a desperate attempt to smear the fact he got hammered last week. Your candidate got hammered. She did worse than you did.
You're changing the subject. What you're talking about is that community there. We're not talking about Susan Hall. That man said...
No, we're not talking about it because she was a total failure.
That man said his community have rejected the Labour Party because of what they have or have not...
Why is Keir Starmer responsible for what that guy says, what some random person says?
No, because
the guy's nothing to do with the Labour Party, Sean.
Palestine is a very big issue for the Labour Party because of the way in which they played it.
Let's bring Alison back into it now, because, you know, there are aspects of this where Jess Phillips is piping up now saying, you know, I'm absolutely bricking... I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I'm absolutely bricking it over my seat because of Gaza. Imagine if she tweeted that. And what does the Mayor of the West Midlands do? Straight away, oh, right, ceasefire now, ceasefire on Gaza, ceasefire... You know, Sadiq Khan, again, one of the first things after his re-election, ceasefire on Gaza.
That's the government's policy too.
They're not the Mayor for those particular... They're not the Mayors for Palestine, are they? Yeah.
I think Matthew is being disingenuous.
Yes, in the extreme.
Growing Muslim numbers who have been Labour supporters, they've been counted on as a block vote for Labour, and now they're kicking off on certain aspects of things. And I think we are going to see Labour MPs, even very good and honourable ones, under pressure to bend to certain policies which are inimical to the will of the majority of British people.
Under pressure, but there's no evidence that they are doing the bending. You're absolutely right. Of course, it's a very serious issue. I totally agree with you, Alison.
Can I just put this to you seriously? If he is willing to allow someone into his party who, by the way, I have no... Apart from the fact that she's just done this bonkers defection, I haven't really got a massive issue with Natalie Elphicke at all. I mean, you know, I thought she was relatively sound until quite recently, actually. But, you know, if he...
I might let you in, Patrick, if you want to go in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can get that through the National Executive.
But if he's willing to forego all of his principles and let her in, at the cost of, by the way, quite a few of his own MPs, then what is there to guarantee he wouldn't all of a sudden you end up with this ranting and raving Allahu Akbar guy with a Labour rosette?
I don't understand what principle he's changed at Natalie Elphicke in. Natalie Elphicke has been... Natalie Elphicke made a speech in the House of Commons 10 days ago about housing, where she criticised the government completely for its retreat on the landlord's bill. That's the thing she's going to be advising the party on. OK, he hasn't changed one policy because of Natalie Elphicke. Her politics have changed because she sees what a failure the Conservative government is, and the rats are leaving the Tories sinking shit.
Can I say something? Right, most people in the country are not going to say, "Oh, well done, Natalie. You know a lot about housing. That's the right thing to do." What they're going to say is, Keir Starmer should have shown a bit of class and said, "Thank you for your support, but no, because you're very, very, very far away from where we are and where we're going." But the reason he didn't say that because he doesn't have one particular direction of travel. That's the difference, Matthew. Most people are not sat at home with an Excel sheet looking at policy. What they look at is how does this feel, what these people say. And she has been 100 miles away from where
what she's done is what she's majored on, Sean, is the complete and total failure of this government to stop the boats. Her constituencies in Dover, her constituents are paying the price for 14 years of government failure and migration, which has seen the small boats crisis get worse, not better.
You're saying it's all about her. That I can accept.
No, I'm saying that she thinks the government's failed on the small boats crisis, and that Keir's got a plan.
Keir Starmer should have just said, "Thank you, Natalie, but no, support us from over there."
A year ago, Natalie Elphicke wrote an article for the Daily Mail complaining about that Starmer was weak on the small boats. So she's changed her tune, hasn't she?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, and people do change their mind. And we're going to discuss later Labour's next step on its plan to stop the small boats, which I'm sure she's going to endorse.
The only surprise about Natalie is that she's far to the right of most of the people sitting on the Conservative benches. I mean, there's at least 50 of them who are far more left-wing than she is, aren't there?
No, there are.
More like 300 of them.
I think, you know, we hear all too often, don't we, that silence is violence. And I think we have to consider that when we think about how silent Keir Starmer has been on some of the, I would say, filth. What Wes Streeting tweeted was filth, I think, about how basically people who want to vote for Conservatives are white supremacists.
He didn't quite say that.
Well, what did he say? He said that a victory for Susan Hall will be a victory for white supremacists, racists, and something else.
Susan Hall endorsed Donald Trump. She liked Islamophobic. She liked Islamophobic posts on Facebook, and that's why she got hammered. You know, because the people of London, of all different communities,
because he was making it up.
No, he wasn't making it up. Because she'd endorsed Donald Trump.
So go on, is Sean a white supremacist?
No, but Sean wasn't the candidate. That's why Sean got more votes than Susan Hall did.
I did vote for her.
You might have won, Sean, if you'd restood.
for her.
Yeah, and I've got to say, Matthew, again, I think you're being disingenuous. What he said was very, very offensive. You're talking to a person like me who spent most of his youth running away from the NF. So to be told, just because I don't share his political views, I'm somehow a white supremacist, I actually think is dangerous, because what you're saying to people is you can't even look.
He didn't say you were a white supremacist. Well, he would do comforts to people. That's different.
Okay, what he wrote made people think, OK, if I do this, am I a white supremacist? That's wrong. Just because I don't
still went out and voted Labour.
Just because I don't share your political view, you can't just then label me any way you like. I think it's dangerous. And it terrifies small communities, because they don't know what to do. Because if they want to go a different way for housing or whatever, they're going to be accused of being racist, which is something they can't stomach.
All right, now, I mean, this is. It's good to have you back, Sean. By the way, we have missed you. Thank you very much. Yes, right. Let's crack on. OK, so we have got a heck of a lot to get through tonight. Still to come, I will show you my experience at the pro-Palestine encampment at Oxford University.
Do you think this might be a bit fascist? Is this a little bit fascist?
Palestine!
No? OK.
Palestine!
I'll also speak to the co-chair of the Northwest Friends of Israel. It's Rafi Bloom very shortly. That's because the National Union of Students voted to expel its main Jewish group. But up next, we've touched on it a little bit there, but we're going in depth. Has Sir Keir Starmer made a huge mistake by allowing Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party? So, Labour councillor Brenda Chilton is going head-to-head with the party's former spokesman, James Mathewson. Make sure you stay tuned for that. All go.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams, and it's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits grown in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her product. But it's ended up winning for King Charles, because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So why did they go?
Gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan, because they're saying, we don't want your jam, we're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow-style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website, Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now, by trying to cash in on her royal title, because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And she's, I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her, because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist? Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, Rafi Bloom speaks out on the National Union of Students delegates calling for the expulsion of the main Jewish group. I mean, it's absolutely insane what's going on. And then you couple that with what's happening in Sweden as we speak, with the Jewish Eurovision contestant being told to make sure they stay in their hotel amid fears of their life. Greta Thunberg's at that pro-Palestine rally, by the way, so there we go. Anyway, first, should Sir Keir Starmer have allowed Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party? Now, Elphicke has apologised today, hasn't she, to her new Labour colleagues for her previous comments she made supporting her ex-husband following his conviction of sexual assault. Jess Phillips, a Labour MP, urged Miss Elphicke to account for her actions. And she said in a statement today, the period of 2017 to 2020 was an incredibly stressful and difficult one for me as I learned more about the person I thought I knew. I know it was far harder for the women who had to relive their experiences and give evidence against him. I have previously and do condemn his behaviour towards other women and towards me. It was right that he was prosecuted and I'm sorry for the comments that I made to his victims. All right, fair enough. So, Sir Keir Starmer's under fire, though, for welcoming the former Conservative MP into the party despite hitting the highest polling lead since the Liz Truss era. And here is the leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt.
First of all, can I reassure the honourable gentleman that I am not about to defect to the opposition benches. They wouldn't be interested in me. I'm too left-wing.
So tonight I'm asking, has Sir Keir Starmer made a huge mistake by allowing Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party? Going head-to-head on this are Labour councillor Brendan Chilton and former Labour speechwriter James Matthewson. Chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both on. James, I'll start with you. Is this a massive, massive mistake from Starmer?
I don't know if it's a massive mistake, but I do think it's misjudged, Patrick, because at the end of the day, we are seeing the likelihood of defections increase, and that's good news for the Labour Party. It shows that the Labour Party's done a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection in recent years, something I'm sure me and Brendan will both agree on. And I think that idea that the party's become more acceptable for people in the Conservative Party is widely a good thing. However, in Natalie Elphicke's case, I do not think her core values, as demonstrated by her voting record, the way she's voted, for example, on access to abortion, on LGBT rights, and other human rights, don't necessarily represent what the Labour Party is meant to represent as a whole. So I think when it comes to core values, there's a question here, and I think the Labour Party could, misjudge these actions by getting a little bit too excited at the prospect of scoring a goal against the Conservatives and potentially lose its way with its core values.
Yeah, I mean, I think, by the way, a lot of viewers and listeners to this show might have quite appreciated Natalie Elphicke's core values for, quite a while until she wandered over onto the Labour benches there. But, Brendan, a lot of his own MPs didn't do it. I mean, the thing that makes this worse for me is that Keir Starmer did not need Natalie Elphicke. He's ahead in the polls. The polls is at its highest level since the Liz Truss era. Why on earth has he welcomed this person in who has slagged him off and now, presumably, in my view, is being incredibly disingenuous about this transformative journey she's been on?
Good evening, Patrick. I think the conversion that Natalie Elphicke has had is greater than that of St. Paul on the road to Damascus. But it is a conversion. And many hundreds of thousands of people up and down the country are having a similar conversion to the Labour Party at the moment. However, I would just say, I think all we can do is take what Natalie Elphicke has said at face value. She has said, released in the statement today, that she regrets the remarks she made during the time when her husband was facing prosecution. I can understand for her at the time it was a very stressful, difficult period, and so we have to accept that. Now, in terms of her other comments that she's made about the Labour Party, I think, of course, very unfortunate, but the Labour Party is now a very broad church. We welcome everyone into the party and to support Keir Starmer as he leads Labour, hopefully to victory at the general election. And I would just say this, this. I don't agree with everything Natalie Elphicke has said, but I'm sure, like James, when we've been out canvassing up and down the country, we found many people actually who vote Labour that would share some of Natalie's views. And of course, the people we need to win over to form the next government might also share those views. And so
she's standing down anyway, though, isn't she? I mean, you've got a Labour candidate in Dover and Deal who is now having to issue statements saying, don't worry, I'm still standing. The person that... I mean, James, it cannot be denied that if Natalie Elphicke was standing for the Conservative Party at the next election, leaflets would have been hitting the doors in Dover and Deal, dishing out a load of absolute bile about her because they would have said she's a hateful candidate, and now she's sitting next to, well, behind Keir Starmer at PMQs.
Yeah, and that's my concern. It's that it looks like, and there is a big question at the moment about the Labour Party. Now, look, I came from the hard left tradition. I came up through the hard left tradition, the trade union movement, and when I left that tradition, said that I believed in a more pragmatic approach to politics than ideology, pure ideology, something me and Brendan will agree on. However, there is a question of how far you take that, because you still have to represent something. You have to have values. And for me, it's more the optics of it. It's more the optics of being able to say, this is our line, this is where we stand. And Sean Bailey said something incredible earlier on your panel there about the fact that, it does look like, the chance for Keir Starmer to say, that's great, thank you, but no, and let her leave the Tory whip behind. That's a stronger position in my mind, because it looks like we've got values, we can choose, we can afford to choose. At the moment, it just looks a bit too opportunistic.
I think it emphasises... and I think it emphasises, Brendan, that actually, potentially, Keir Starmer is fundamentally a very weak man. He wasn't willing to speak out about any of the stuff Sadiq Khan was saying about the rabbi. He didn't dare speak out about Wes Streeting because Wes is sitting on about a 5,000 majority, quite possibly could lose his seat. So he didn't want to speak out about that. And he doesn't have the bottle or the spine to tell someone who is possibly to the right of Genghis Khan that there's no way that she's going to have a place. There's no way she's going to have a place on the Labour benches. It's just weak, Brendan, no?
No, I don't think it is. I think Keir Starmer's been extremely bold and extremely tough in how he's transformed the Labour Party. Now, in terms of this specific case, of course, there will be many in the Labour Party, myself included, that are not entirely comfortable with everything Natalie Elphicke has said. However, she has now left the Conservative Party and joined the Labour Party, and she's pledged her support to the party. She's standing down at the next election, and we have an excellent candidate in Mike Tapp in Dover. I think this is a big Westminster storm in a teacup. No one out there in the country is talking about this tonight. Most people have probably never heard of Natalie Elphicke outside of Dover, and I don't say that disparagingly towards her. It's just a statement of fact. And this will be, yes, tomorrow's chip paper. It's not a major story in the country. The big issue here is the Labour Party has won over the support of the MP for Dover, the area where the migrant crisis and the Channel crossing...
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? Because Keir Starmer shaking their hands and welcoming in a woman who has quite similar views about the trans issues as Rosie Duffield, who has been largely excommunicated, James, from the party.
I do think we're arrogant if we allow ourselves to believe that we've won over Natalie Elphicke in some way. Natalie Elphicke wants to keep her job for the time being. I think that's it. And she wants to do that easily and with less pressure, because the Conservative Party is under immense pressure, and no doubt friends, family members, colleagues, everybody will be saying to her, why are you standing for this? Especially in that community about the small boat stuff, because that's been their primary policy. That's all they've talked about. And then they're in this situation currently where she can't deliver on anything. She can't change anything. She can't do anything about it. So I think for us to believe that it's because we've won her over, I think it's more likely that she's come knocking at our door and we've been kind of, excited enough to let her in because it's a good look. But I do think it does in that small, because you're right, Brendan, not many people will talk about it, not many people will think about it, but there's a small window of opportunity when people turn on the news for 10 seconds and they see that this has happened. And in that 10 seconds, they may just think, is that what I want to see from the Labour?
All right, look, guys, thank you very much. We are bang out of time, I'm afraid, so sorry about that, Brendan, but I'll give you a bit longer next time. Thank you both, chaps, and, have a great evening. All right, so that is Labour councillor Brendan Chilton and former Labour speechwriter James Mathewson there. Look, coming up, all right, is Britain right to refuse to sign the World Health Organisation's pandemic treaty that would see us give away a fifth of our vaccine jabs? Have a look at that chap there on your screen, Tedros or whatever he's called, the head of the WHO, all right? Do we really want him dictating to us how we should handle a pandemic. I appreciate we did not get it absolutely spot on last time, though, did we? But before that, I travelled to the pro-Palestine camp at Oxford University. Things turned quite hostile, but this was the calm before the storm.
There's a megaphone going on there saying that we're unfriendly press, which is interesting.
I have had a shower since. And if that isn't bad enough, activists in the National Union of Students wanted to vote to expel the main Jewish body. It is extraordinary what's going on in the world at the moment. We cover that next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cracking day tomorrow, if you like it fine, warm and sunny. If anything, a little bit warmer than today with light winds thanks to this chunky area of high pressure. Hasn't been fine everywhere today. There has been these weather fronts just trickling across northern Scotland, still bringing some outbreaks of rain, particularly for Caithness, Sutherland and spreading across the Northern Isles. A bit of patchy rain at times across Aberdeenshire too. But for most, it's dry and fine out there. Generally clear skies. A bit of mist and low cloud returning to parts of eastern England, and a few fog patches are possible in the south, where temperatures in the countryside could dip down to 3 or 4 Celsius. Most towns and cities, though, starting tomorrow at 10 or 11 Celsius. And most will start tomorrow with plenty of sunshine, and for many it'll just stay that way. We will see again some misty conditions around a few coasts, particularly perhaps East Anglia, east coast of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more cloud moving into the Western Isles through the day. But any early rain across Shetland should clear. For most, it's fine, sunny spells and warmer than today, 21 to 23, maybe 24 or even 25 in 1 or 2 locations. Another fine day to come on Saturday. Again, the possibility of some mist and low cloud affecting eastern coast. A small chance of 1 or 2 isolated but heavy showers over northern England and southern Scotland. But for many, fine again. And if anything, a little warmer, 24, 25 degrees, a little cooler around some coasts. Goodbye.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported, and not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We are living in absolutely bonkers times, surreal times, dangerous times, OK? Especially when it comes to our university campuses. So, look, just take a little look at some of the stuff that I was getting up to today.
One of the big criticisms of this camp has been that if you were visibly Jewish, that you wouldn't necessarily feel that welcome. And I think it's easy to understand why they might feel a bit like that.
Yeah, that is Oxford. That's Oxford University. They're one of the top universities in the world, a bastion of intellect, etc., etc. So we're going to have more on that later. But now, and it's linked, the National Student Union is facing accusations that their conference in Blackpool last month was dogged with anti-Semitism. Reportedly, up to 20 students tried to force a vote to stop recognising the main Jewish representative body, known as the UJS, Union of Jewish Students. There was also evidence that toilets at the venue had been daubed with anti-Semitic graffiti. So writing for the Times newspaper last night, the Prime Minister said this: only last month the UJS were themselves subject to a shameful attempt to get their organisation kicked out of the NUS, purely because of their support for the principle of a Jewish state. And that's it, isn't it? Forget all this Zionism stuff and all of that. It's about being Jewish, I think. And earlier today, UJS representatives were invited to Downing Street by the Prime Minister to brief him and 20 university vice-chancellors about anti-Semitism on campus. Here's what their president, Edward Isaacs, has to say.
We were very clear that any commitments made today at this meeting need to be followed by swift and decisive action by Vice-Chancellors, because ultimately Jewish students deserve to study in safety and feel that they are included in campus life.
Joining me now is the co-chair of Northwest Friends of Israel, easy for me to say, Rafi Bloom. Rafi, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. We are living through absolutely extraordinary times at the moment. Is it openly anti-Semitic, do you think, that the NUS, let's be honest, pretty far-left organisation, would want to expel the Jewish Union?
I think it's just a further example at that conference to start with of the Jew hate that Jewish students experienced. You mentioned the swastikas daubed in the toilet, effing Zionists in the toilet, again as graffiti. And it just adds to the overall attempts that we're seeing to cleanse university campuses of Zionists, which we know mean Jews. And it really has similar parallels with the 1933 to 35 period in Nazi Germany. It's as simple as that.
I just don't know where Jewish students are safe at the moment. So in Amsterdam, you've got people bulldozing the pro-Palestine camp at a university. We all know what's happening in America, don't we? We've got a procession of different universities in Britain at the moment. Oxford University, which, again, I'll show people a little bit later on. I just don't think it's comfortable to be Jewish at universities anymore. And it's being compounded by the fact that you've got university lecturers and staff signing petitions in support of these middle-class fake communists.
Absolutely. Look, free speech is sacrosanct, and as a democracy, we have to protect that. But what we've seen is an unprecedented rise in campus anti-Semitism since the genocidal Hamas attacks of October the 7th. And that includes the intimidation of Jewish students, these protests that have now culminated in these encampments. They're rife with anti-Semitic rhetoric, things like from the river to the sea, Intifada, make us proud, Houthis make us proud. And they're making universities no-go areas for Jewish students. And it's absolutely shocking. And the universities need to act. A lot of these protests are taking place on university property. They could act. Overwhelmingly, they don't act. But they have a duty of care to their Jewish students to make them safe, and they're not doing that.
There is unquestionably a fear going around at the moment. When I was outside Oxford University today, or their Natural History Museum is, there were people coming up to me who were not part of this protest, young people, students at Oxford, who watched the show, who liked the channel, and as they'd come past, they'd say, they kind of whisper, oh, I quite like what you do, but they didn't want the people in that encampment to see them mixing with me, because presumably they'd be excommunicated as well. There were reports there from that camp that a Jewish student had tried to enter, and because they refused to sign a piece of paper that basically said that they supported the Palestinian cause, they were turfed out. I mean, this is insane that this is happening in modern Britain.
It's all part of this narrative to demonise Zionism. And I think for your viewers, it's worth just very briefly reminding people that Zionism is the right of the Jewish people to have self-determination in their ancestral and religious homeland. And it's this framing of Zionism as colonialism, genocidal. And actually, Zionism is the antithesis of colonialism, because it's the return of a people who had been expelled by numerous colonialist oppressors for millennia. And then when you have that, and you have this unholy alliance of far-left woke student bodies with radical Islamists on the right who wouldn't agree on feminism, on sexuality, on religion, but come together over the Jews. It's a toxic atmosphere that is making Jewish students who have a democratic right to study on our campuses feel manifestly unsafe. And the government has spoken fine words, but they now need to act.
Nothing for me, Rafi, embodies the complete lunacy of this unholy alliance, as you so articulately put it there, as actually one thing that's happening right now in Sweden with the Eurovision issue. So, look, I absolutely don't want to, stereotype too generally here, but there's a large demographic of the LGBTQ plus community who enjoy Eurovision, and that's fantastic. But they also appear to be doing stuff like this as well. I've just got a little clip because this is what's happening right now, apparently, in Sweden. So we'll just play a little clip.
Free Palestine!
So that's one of the clips there, which is the Israeli act being booed on stage. There's also other reports, which we'll bring you later on. It's not reports, I've seen it, which is of, mobs, really, on the streets, and the Israeli act being told by their own security that they have to stay in their hotel. Greta Thunberg's apparently at this particular rally as well. I mean, it looks as though people are waiting for a lynching.
And they probably are. This is a young 20-year-old girl who survived a terror attack, a genocidal terror attack by an organisation who wants to murder Jews anywhere, who lives in a country which is the only democracy in the Middle East that has free sexuality, that has one of the biggest gay pride parades seen anywhere in the world every year in Tel Aviv. And you have the LGBTQ community, some of them anyway, standing proudly alongside support for what is going on for Hamas's attack against Israel. If these people went to Gaza, they would be thrown off tall buildings. It is absolute lunacy, and part of that is down to our educational institutions for encouraging it, for allowing it, but ultimately, these people are, to paraphrase Churchill, they are appeasers who feed the crocodile in the hope that it won't eat them.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And, I've been to numerous pro-Palestine demonstrations at a variety of different locations. This one at Oxford today, this encampment. We're going to see some of the footage from it later. To be honest, it's right. If I was Jewish, I would. It is intimidating and it is threatening and it is disgusting. There is another aspect to it, by the way, that is just completely laughable. And I think sometimes with these people, one of the best things to do is ridicule them a little bit, because we hold a mirror up to them. Maybe at some point they might actually see who they are. But yeah, go on, Rafi, quickly.
You are correct in what you say. However, what we have been seeing in these encampments more and more, they start off that way in this benign sort of wokey, peaceful way, but they are being infiltrated by actors from the outside who wish to radicalise them and make them more violent and more extreme. And that is where the universities have to act. Yeah. And they're not at the moment.
Well, and that has happened. That's absolutely happened. Look, Rafi, thank you very much. You take care. All the best. That's Rafi Bleem there, who's the co-chair of Northwest Friends of Israel. Right, look. In a statement, the NUS made clear it was individuals, not the body itself, who tried to expel the UJS. They said a lie is circulating online that NUS have voted to disengage with UJS. This is categorically untrue. It is shameful to spread misinformation and fear amongst Jewish students at a time when tensions are already so heightened. The truth is that NUS, in fact, stopped a small group of students who tried to call the UJS's legitimacy into question. All right, OK, coming up, I'll show you my experience. Yes, as we were talking about at that pro-Palestine encampment at Oxford University.
Everyone's linked arms to try to force us, I think, out.
So afraid of COVID, that lot, aren't they? Which brings me on to the World Health Organization wanting Britain to sign up for a pandemic treaty that would see us sign away a fifth of our vaccines. Look, should we be jumping ship from the doomsday globalist body? Professor Jay Bhattacharya, co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration, is live, and it's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Scotland, home of Humza Yousaf's hate crime law, aka the Clype's Charter.
Clype, a delightfully Scottish word for a grass, a snitch, or in the context of Russell Finley's opening gambit during the hate crime debate at Holyrood last week, reporting your friends, family and neighbours to the police for alleged hate crimes. The SNP responded by doubling down on the new law's ability to protect vulnerable victims.
I am confident that we have robust legislation that will protect those who are vulnerable to harm.
But other victims are emerging in the wake of this new legislation. As the bill moved through Parliament, concerns rose of police inundated with vexatious complaints, targeting individuals who had committed no crimes. The first fortnight of the new law gave rise to nearly 9,000 complaints.
The vast majority, at least 95%, have been deemed not to be crimes.
False reporting is nothing new. A social post from Scottish Conservative Murdo Fraser was flagged by a trans rights activist in November.
Police decided that no crime had been committed, but nevertheless that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
And Alba Westminster leader Neil Hanvey says he too has been targeted under pre-existing legislation.
I've been the victim of at least one of those complaints, and that's taken up the time of police officers.
Thick skin can be expected of our elected officials, but what about the public? 74-year-old Morag McDougall-Brown says she was reported to police by a neighbour, and the experience has taken its toll.
I hate to think that anybody like me or similar to my age would ever have to go through this, because I really don't think I will ever go over it.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, the UK is refusing to sign the World Health Organisation's pandemic treaty amid fears that it won't actually benefit Britain. The treaty states the UK would have to give away up to 20% of health products, such as PPE and vaccines, and be prevented from stockpiling supplies. But apparently will only agree to a deal if British-made jabs stay in the British national interest. The WHO Director General told officials on Friday, give the people of the world, the people of your countries, the people you represent, a safer future. I have one simple request. Please get this done for them. OK, let's cross over now to California, where I am joined by Dr. Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford School of Medicine, someone who was incredibly prominent with the now, I think, largely vindicated Great Barrington Declaration. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Why should Britain not sign up to this nonsense from the WHO?
I think generally the WHO has done a terrible job during the pandemic. The idea that they protected human life well is laughable. They put forward the lockdown policies that failed everywhere, that caused tremendous collateral damage. They denied that the virus was airborne. They failed time after time. And the same leadership that failed is asking for more power. It makes absolutely no sense. And it is not in the interest of Great Britain. I do think that more sharing of products might be in the interest of Great Britain. So, for instance, if the is over there, you may want to share the vaccines with people over there. But I don't trust the World Health Organization to make that designation appropriately, and that I think is the major problem.
Yeah, it's a question of trust, and let's just say something else happens or whatever. Yeah, really, seriously, this guy Tedros from Ethiopia could tell us, could he, that we have to give away a certain percentage of our protective gear to people in other countries. This guy who's absolutely resolutely refused to in any way, shape or form condemn China, which of course has got nothing to do with the amount of money that China has given to his home country over the years at all. Nothing at all. I mean, why should we listen to this guy?
We shouldn't. I mean, I think if the WHO would like Britain or the UK or the United States or any other country to trust it, it needs to turn over its leadership. It needs to give guarantees that the harms that it imposed on the world during the pandemic with anti-scientific ideas embraced and essentially the Chinese-style lockdowns and policies recommended to the world, that those kinds of problems will never happen again. And there need to be real reforms before any consideration of giving the WHO more power. And the question of national sovereignty absolutely is an important one, Patrick. It is very important that each country understand that we're just basically saying a supranational organization, a national organization. Here, you take over some of the most fundamental decisions that we would make about our own health, our own conditions. I mean, it makes no sense to do that unless we trust them, and we don't.
Is this just the furthering of a globalist agenda, do you think?
It absolutely is. I mean, that's exactly the idea. It's to globalize the response to future pandemics, globalize the calling of future pandemics, globalize the resource allocation of future pandemics. And if you had a global organization that actually had the benefits of each home country in its own heart, fundamentally built in, you might consider it. But here you don't have that kind of organization. You have an organization that is beholden to the interest of a relatively small number of people, of countries that are anti-democratic rule it. Large organizations like the Gates Foundation fund it, and I don't know whose interests they serve. Why someone in the UK would want to support it, I have no idea.
No, indeed. And I don't know whether or not I would ever get to vote for Tedros, would I, before he decides whether or not I can live and die during a pandemic?
That's a very good point, Patrick. It is an anti-democratic organization. There is no, you can have your country vote, and you're one of whatever 100 and some countries that vote for or against various things. But even there's not really votes. There's just under the new treaty, there'd be tremendous power in the hands of Tedros to call that there's a new pandemic, and then all of the sort of parts of the treaty would come into play. They say up and down that they're not going to violate national sovereignty, but looking at the provisions of the treaty and the way they acted during the pandemic, who can trust them to actually keep their word?
Look, thank you very much. Great to talk to you. I would love to chat to you again very, very soon. That's Dr. Jay Bhattacharya there for the Stanford School of Medicine and, of course, of the Great Barrington Declaration. Next, my run-in with the so-called peaceful protesters at Oxford University. I'll take you behind the curtain of these pro-Palestine fanatics, people who stand accused of intimidating Jewish students on campus. I think we can have a little sneak peek.
One of the big criticisms of this camp has been that if you were visibly Jewish, that you wouldn't necessarily feel that welcome. And I think it's easy to understand why they might feel a bit like that.
Bring in the water cannons. See you in a bit.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cracking day tomorrow, if you like it fine, warm and sunny. If anything, a little bit warmer than today with light winds thanks to this chunky area of high pressure. Hasn't been fine everywhere today. There has been these weather fronts just trickling across northern Scotland, still bringing some outbreaks of rain, particularly for Caithness, Sutherland and spreading across the Northern Isles. A bit of patchy rain at times across Aberdeenshire too. But for most, it's dry and fine out there. Generally clear skies. A bit of mist and low cloud returning to parts of eastern England, and a few fog patches are possible in the south, where temperatures in the countryside could dip down to 3 or 4 Celsius. Most towns and cities there starting tomorrow at 10 or 11 Celsius. And most will start tomorrow with plenty of sunshine, and for many it'll just stay that way. We will see again some misty conditions around a few coasts, particularly perhaps East Anglia, east coast of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more cloud moving into the Western Isles through the day. But any early rain across Shetland should clear. For most, it's fine, sunny spells and warmer than today, 21 to 23, maybe 24 or even 25 in 1 or 2 locations. Another fine day to come on Saturday. Again, the possibility of some mist and low cloud affecting eastern coast. A small chance of 1 or 2 isolated but heavy showers over northern England and southern Scotland. But for many, fine again. And if anything, a little warmer, 24, 25 degrees, a little cooler around some coasts. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, there's a megaphone going on there saying that we're unfriendly press, which is interesting. I expose the pro-Palestine Oxford lunatics. Do you think this might be a bit fascist? Just a little bit fascist?
Palestine!
No? Okay.
Palestine!
Maybe they're the fascists. And why have we released this jihadi from prison? I've also got a big breaking political story to bring you in about half an hour's time. So stay tuned for that. And
Free Palestine!
yeah, chickens for KFC, boo Israel at Eurovision. On my panel, it is the Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Lord Sean Bailey and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larser. And on your marks, get ready. Tell me what's wrong with this clip. Any ideas? Any ideas? All right, well, get ready, Britain. Here we go. Yes, 10:30 p.m. tonight. Big political story is dropping, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But before that, bring out the water cannons. Next.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has cautioned the Bank of England against cutting interest rates too quickly. The bank's decided to hold borrowing costs at the same level, 5.25%. But Governor Andrew Bailey says things are moving in the right direction. He suggests that an interest rate cut could come as soon as next month. Now, the government insists the economy has turned a corner, but Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, says many households are still struggling with the cost of living.
Bank of England's decision today is its independent right to make decisions about interest rates, but clearly that's bad news for people at home who are having to reset their mortgages for the years ahead at a more expensive rate, and for people having to pay rent for their homes. And that's why the economy has not turned a corner, and why people at home are not feeling any uptick when they're told by Conservative ministers doing victory laps this week that the country has turned a corner when it hasn't.
Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators have gathered in the Swedish city of Malmo to protest against Israel competing in the Eurovision Song Contest. Protesters dressed in Palestinian colours packed the city's historic market square before a planned march through the city. During a dress rehearsal last night, crowds could be heard booing Israel's performance. The second semi-final of the contest is underway. The Foreign Secretary says Britain will not follow the US in withholding arms from Israel if a full-scale invasion of Rafah goes ahead. His comments come hours after President Joe Biden vowed to cut supplies if the southern Gazan city is attacked. Lord Cameron says there's a fundamental difference because UK sales are much smaller in scale and policed by strict rules. But he added the government would not support an invasion of Rafah unless it saw a credible plan to protect civilians. More than 9,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats this year. Official figures show 250 people made the journey since Monday, taking the tally for 2024 to almost 8,800. However, GB News can confirm another 3 small boats arrived on Thursday. It comes after a Home Office U-turn on the publication of the number of small boat migrants being prevented from making the illegal journey by French police. And Donald Trump's lawyers have questioned Stormy Daniels' credibility, accusing her of profiting from a story involving a sexual encounter with the former US president. It's now at the centre of the former president's so-called hush money trial. Ms. Daniels says she signed a statement denying an affair with Mr. Trump because she was told she had to. Her lawyers previously argued the statement was designed to be technically accurate by denying an affair without denying a sexual encounter. Mr. Trump's lawyers have suggested she's more interested in getting a payout than telling the truth, and he denies any wrongdoing. We can get more on all of our stories by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to our website for more information about GB News alerts. Now, back to Patrick.
Well, it's time now to show you my experience at the pro-Palestine encampment at Oxford University. Fascinating case, Oxford, isn't it? One of the best universities in the world, supposedly a bastion of freedom of speech and academic rigour. However, this camp was set up, and since it was set up, at least 108 academic staff and other members of staff at that university have signed a letter of support to these pro-Palestine individuals. A Jewish student has reportedly been turfed out of this camp for refusing to sign a letter saying that they are bang in favour of everything that has been going on when it comes to Hamas's resistance to the Israelis. And as you're about to see, this is a seriously well-run camp. They've got a press team, a medical tent, different events, and some speakers throughout the course of the day. But as you're also about to see, these pro-Palestine fanatics, they're not really just all in a circle singing Kumbaya, but it did start out quite calmly. Here we are at the Oxford University encampment. It is just outside the Oxford Museum of Natural History. Hiya, are you all right? Are we all right? Just have a quick chat with a couple of people about why you're here and what's going on and everything like that. Is that possible?
So actually, most of us here would rather not give a comment.
That's fine.
But we have some people in the press team who might be free. Would you just wait here for a minute?
That's lovely. Yeah, thank you. OK, brilliant.
Who are you guys with?
So my name's Patrick. I'm with GB News. Thank you.
You guys are?
Hello. You're right. Yeah, so we've already got a load of masks there, a strong American accent and not a huge amount of racial diversity, but I was told that no one wants to show their face, and I wonder why. But now I'm going to give you a little peek behind the curtain, so here is a bit about how that camp operates. It says on this board here, it's day 4, community check-in at 10 a.m, Palestine and South Africa teaching at 3 o'clock, so I think we're maybe just about in time for that, actually. Liberation Fellowship at 6 and an open mic at 8 p.m. There's a row of camp jobs here. The bins, the litter check, the food tent assistant, a floor fix and water refill. There's a megaphone going on there saying that we're unfriendly press, which is interesting. Yes, GB News' unfriendly press apparently is also quite funny, wasn't it, that none of those camp jobs have been done and apparently they don't wake up before 10 a.m. But they certainly don't believe in the freedom of the press or the individual's right to freedom of expression. Roll on. Is it possible to have a quick chat with you? Just about why you're here. It's possible to have a quick chat with you about why you feel so strongly?
Yeah. Why don't we don't speak? Sorry, I'm new here.
But do you want to talk, though? Because it's...
Yeah, I mean, I just... They asked me not to.
Oh, okay.
We do engage with press, just not this press, for obvious reasons. It's GB
I'm not
News.
really, I don't really know.
But if that woman hadn't have come up and said anything to you, you would have spoken.
Actually, I do.
He does want to.
I don't know if you caught that. He said he doesn't want to talk, and then he turned around and said, I actually do want to talk.
And this is what happens at every single one of these events, right? So you go up, people are perfectly happy to talk, and then someone with pink hair who's decided to stop shaving her armpits comes up and says, no, don't talk to that lot, and then they get too scared. He was worried about being, get this, excommunicated from the camp if he dared to break camp rules. Also all normal stuff. I genuinely went there to ask questions and speak to people about their views, but rather than have a conversation with me, I was, well, physically swarmed.
If we pan round, we can see that it's all kicking up a notch now. So, it's quite good. Yeah. You all right there? So, are you a student at the university? Can I ask, do you want to explain why Oxford is complicit in genocide? Oh, okay. If we turn it round, we can see that there's quite a lot of people. It's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the big criticisms of this camp has been that if you were visibly Jewish, that you wouldn't necessarily feel that welcome. And I think it's easy to understand why they might feel a bit like that.
Yeah, so then, look, the longer I was there, despite the fact, I mean, the irony here, the great irony here is that if just one or two of them had spoken to me, we probably would have got enough material. I could have been on my way in a few minutes, but no, I have to hang around. And then it really did begin to kind of escalate. They were kind of pushing us back, or trying to anyway, until we left the camp.
Someone's linked arms to try to force us, I think, out. It's a bastion of freedom of speech, Oxford University. Do you think this might be a bit fascist? Is this a little bit fascist? No? OK.
Yeah, there we go. And then even after we did leave, they still weren't quite finished. They were just charging after me down the road, gloating, there are more of us than there are of you.
Wow. That was the encampment there at Oxford University. Obviously, unfortunately, people didn't particularly want to talk. That's fine, that's their right, but, you know, people can make their own minds up about the kind of people here.
We're not touching anyone.
There we go, lovely. Has anyone ever told you you might be behaving a bit like a fascist?
Yeah, there we go. I mean, look, I've been to quite a few of these now. The ones in central London have got a massive undertone of, you know, proper aggression and violence. That one, to be honest with you, I just thought was quite sad. Again, I'll just say it's a load of renter mobs, all people who are students, and they've decided that they're going to make some kind of glorious stand by dyeing their hair pink and refusing to shave their armpits. So let's get the thoughts of my panel. It's Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Alison, as you know, just completely laughable as some of those individuals were, really. The point is that we had members of staff from that university, and this was pointed out to me by an academic who was at the university, who was sympathetic to some of the stuff that we were doing here at GB News, tooting their horns on the way past. And you think, you know, how would it feel to be Jewish there, really?
Yeah, really horrible. That my old university, Cambridge, they're all camped outside King's College on the strip of green, and the students are doing their exams at the moment. They have to walk past those tents, and there'll be a lot of Jewish students who are very upset. As you said at the top, the Union of Jewish Students, the NUS, basically trying to kind of cancel them and making all these anti-Zionist occupations. Look, being young and foolish is the job description of a student, but these people, they're supposed to be the most intelligent people in the country, and they are absolute idiots. There's a student, Oxford student, saying that as a colonised people, Palestinians have got the right to resist against occupation. Gaza isn't occupied. The Israelis left it in 2005. So the lack of knowledge. And I just want to say, Patrick, OK, about Jewish people in this country, we are losing. Jews are going to be leaving in their thousands our country. And these kids know nothing about history. This all started because on October the 7th, one of the most heinous massacres in modern history, and indeed the biggest slaughter of the Jews since the Second World War, took place. And they are having having wellness sessions.
Yeah.
Leave it just... It's horrible. It's really disrespectful and horrible.
It is. But it's also that point for me, you know, that's the closest I've ever got to Oxford University, to be honest with you. And I was always really in awe of it. Mentally, I was always really in awe when someone said to me, I've been to Oxford or I've been to Cambridge. I'll be honest with you, I always thought, oh, God, you might be better than me, actually, really. And I met a load of them today and I thought, gosh, what a waste of oxygen.
Look, academic success doesn't automatically breed wisdom, is how I'd respond to that. What I would say is really disappointing for me, the whole notion of being a student is to debate, is to learn, is to test. And what they're doing is just rejecting. They won't have that conversation. And why it's a real worry, these are people who are very likely to end up in positions of power in our society. So could you imagine a Home Secretary who will not have a debate about anything? Can you imagine someone who just says, no, this is our way or no way? The problem for these young people and what they're doing, they're making extreme reactions to anything they don't like, the norm, and that is problematic. That's how fascism grew. Fascism works from the fact that we will stand no conversation, and they need to look at themselves because they'll have no conversation. They'll never know if they're wrong because they simply won't test it, and that's a real bad sign for this country.
Yeah, Matthew, I mean, what do we do about this? Because beneath the fact that there's quite a ridiculous bunch of individuals there all decided to live in tents and, you know, have Glastonbury without the fun, there is a serious undercurrent to this, which is that they really don't care about how uncomfortable they make a lot of people, and the university, and I would also say the police, aren't really doing anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the university would say it was trying to navigate a fine line between making them martyrs. We've seen, obviously, the footage of some of the removal of the American encampments, which have taken, I mean, they're bigger encampments, but they've taken quite a lot of kind of, you know, bailiffs in hard hats, etc., and that becomes the focal point. But I think, I mean, I agree with Sean that the most depressing thing is their absolute unwillingness to engage in debate. I mean, if Oxford's famous for anything, it's famous for debating ideas from different perspectives. And, you know, to me, it should be a punishable offence to get in the way of a free press. Yeah, and because, you know, one day GB News, who knows, well, what if it was a different channel and different... You know, of course, you have to stick with the principle of freedom of expression. And so I hope the university authorities are watching on that front.
I would just make the point as well that it's easy because what I've decided to do is just get in amongst a load of these different things. So it is very easy to get the impression that they only hate GB News. And they do probably hate GB News. They definitely do. However, they do actually just really kind of hate anyone. I mean, they wouldn't have been massively in favour of the BBC rocking up there. The only ones that they like are, you know, the Al Jazeera news van that turns up, realistically. So, you know, it's not... You just hear more of it because I'm the one who's wandering around this stuff and actually physically getting it. But sorry, Sean, you were about to say...
It's troubling, and what Oxford University needs to look at is their reputation. I was invited to do a debate there very recently, and I fought twice and decided not to go because I don't want to go to a place where they're just going to paint you in any way they want to paint you. I'm not sure they're capable of having a debate where you might have to argue something that they don't agree with. And that's important. Oxford, for centuries now, has been a place of fought, challenge, debate. They are destroying that over this one issue, and I think that's a real worry for us. And if I'm thinking, well, I won't go there, who else won't go there? Are there young people at home who think, I can't go to this place because... And the thing I'd say... Jewish people for years have talked about anti-Semitism, and as a black person, you've understood it as racism. This is an added element, and it makes me feel nervous. OK, once they're finished with the Jews, who's next? Who's next? I sat in a meeting today and heard about how Uganda has very bad policies around LGBT rights. I don't agree with them at all. But are they going to punish me because I'm black and Ugandans are black? I have to wonder that, because if you're Israeli, that's what it might feel like now. And these are the things they're not taking into account, and I really think they should.
Well, what's so ironic, isn't it, is that there they are with the masks on, so intimidating, and the Yasser Arafat memorial tea towel wrapped around them in the sort of ridiculous fashion statement. As Sean says, they are calling Israel racist state, they're, Zionist entity, which, by the way, Zionist entity is what Hamas calls Israel. But Israel is a modern, progressive, liberal, one of the only country in that region which is pro-gay, pro-gay marriage, immensely liberal. So all these students who'll be shouting about homophobia and misogyny, wouldn't they, on any other day of the week? But suddenly they appear to be on the side.
There's not much liberating Gaza from Hamas, is there?
No, there's not. They did have posts outside saying Israel's destroyed all the universities in Gaza as well, which did kind of make me laugh somewhat. I mean, I do wonder what they were teaching there anyway. But so look, a joint statement from the organisers, Oxford Action for Palestine and Cambridge, Palestine. Red. Over 100 universities across the globe have now taken bold and urgent action for Palestine. As members of these institutions, we refuse to accept our universities' complicity in Israel's war crimes against the Palestinian people, and we refuse to stand by while they justify Israel's campaign of mass slaughter, starvation and displacement. Of course, it would have been nice if anyone there had bothered. We've had to call in a right of reply, despite the fact that I drove 2 hours to Oxford today to try and physically get one from a load of the people there. But anyway, coming up, I'll run you through the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and there is a major political news story that's about to break, and that breaks in 12 minutes time, so stay tuned for that. But next is a major GB News exclusive. We can reveal that one of Britain's most dangerous terrorists is now back walking the streets. I'll just have all the details for you in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and re-incarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christys.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. There is a major political story about the Labour Party happening just after past, so stay tuned for that. But right now, GB News can reveal One of Britain's most dangerous terrorists is now back walking the streets. Mohammed Nahin Ahmed was jailed after he was caught travelling to Syria intent on martyrdom. A judge later ruled he was a dangerous fundamentalist who was, quote, interested in and deeply committed to violent extremism. He was caged for 17 years. There he is. That's him there. So that's him holding a gun, pointing it at you at home. He was caged for 17 years and 5 months in 2014. But 7 years before his release, it was reported last year that he was due to appear before a parole board in December. But what has not been reported until today is that officials gave him the green light to be freed, and he is actually out and about. I'm joined now by the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Lock your doors, Chris.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And this man was too dangerous to be released 12 months ago. But suddenly he's obviously had a change of opinion, and now he's perfectly safe. I mean, this is a man that's already decided that he's going to martyr himself for the cause. So, you know, what's to stop him doing something equally as bad when he comes out?
Yeah. Is it possible to get these parole hearings done publicly, or at least to have a recording of them and the reasons behind the decision-making put out there in public? Because, I mean, it is us who has to live with this guy.
Well, it is. And I think that's a key point, actually. The parole board should be forced to live next door to this guy. Because he will be living next door to someone and influencing people in that community. And I can assure you the communities that he goes out to won't be that necessarily keen on having a convicted terrorist living next door to them. But parole boards are a bit of a law unto themselves. I think they've been looked into more recently, but they do seem to be making some bizarre decisions. And of course, it is mired in secrecy, and we just don't get to find out the exact rationale for them letting him leave prison.
There does appear to be an astonishing naivety. I mean, anyone who wants to travel to Syria intent on martyrdom and, you know, who was quoted as being deeply committed to violent extremism, you know, to be let out, I think I'm right in saying, about 7 years early. The idea as well that we knew he was going to be before the parole board, but it wasn't reported, you know, until now that he's out. There could be no public backlash. There was no opportunity for people, or there to be some kind of public discourse, for someone to raise it in the House of Commons and say that we need to stop this. This is lunacy. They just think, you know, let's just throw the gates open, off you pop, you know, back to wherever it is you're from.
Yeah, job done. He's been released. And not only him, actually. I mean, many other terrorists have been released over the last year or so. And even worse, the prisons are absolutely stonking full. And I think just recently they've put another edict out to carry on releasing people early because there's no room for them in the prisons.
Yeah, I mean, it does say a lot about our prison service. If it is actually a hotbed of jihadi training at the moment, there's every chance you could go in as a low-grade burglar or shoplifter and come out a radical Islamic fundamentalist. But this guy was already one when he went in. You know, he's one of the OGs of that prison. He was already one when he went in. And what kind of de-radicalisation do people have to go through, in your view, OK, and you have got literally an expert view on this, is it really possible for people who have mentally made the decision that they want to be a martyr to then be de-radicalised?
Well, historically, there have been people that have been de-radicalised. There's no doubt about that. And many people are on the first and second rungs of radicalisation and are, you know, pushed back. But when you've got it so deep into you, set into your psyche, that you believe the things that they believe in the caliphate, they believe that we should all be living under Islamic law, and they believe in dying for the cause. It's a very difficult thing to get away from, the fact that they are still very, very dangerous people.
And last question with you, Chris. What kind of monitoring are we doing with this guy, possibly, when he's out and about? You know, is this guy... Is there one saving grace to all of this, that we can all sleep better in our beds tonight, knowing that there is probably some kind of 24-hour surveillance taking place on our friend Mohammed there?
Well, there will be some kind of surveillance, but of course, there's only a limited amount of surveillance opportunities. You know, there are so many other people to watch as well. So very difficult for the security services. I have no doubt that they will be monitoring. I have no doubt that they will be calling him in for interviews and maybe doing some tests on him to make sure that he's not thinking of doing something bad. But of course, there's no safe place for people like this that want to kill innocent individuals.
No, look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, as ever. That's Chris Phillips there. The former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. I just think, you know, when you have individuals like Chris, they're baffled at the idea to release someone like this early. I think it tells you everything you need to know. But alas, we have got a comment from the Ministry of Justice. That's nice of them to get in touch. The decision to release Mohammed Nahin Ahmed was made by the Independent Parole Board after a thorough risk assessment, and he is now subject to probation supervision, strict licence conditions, and faces a return to prison if he breaks them. Good. Of course, the concern with someone like Mohammed is that if he breaks his parole conditions, that might mean a terror attack, in which case it won't just be him getting a life sentence, will it? But coming up, what do you think happens when a trans athlete is allowed to compete against high school girls? Yeah. Which way do you see that one going? Stick around and find out. Plus, I've got all of tomorrow's newspapers tonight with my razor-sharp panel. They're primed and ready to go. And yes, I will stop teasing you with it now. When I come back, a big breaking news story about the Labour Party. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cracking day tomorrow, if you like it fine, warm and sunny. If anything, a little bit warmer than today with light winds thanks to this chunky area of high pressure. Hasn't been fine everywhere today. There has been these weather fronts just trickling across northern Scotland, still bringing some outbreaks of rain, particularly for Caithness, Sutherland and spreading across the Northern Isles. A bit of patchy rain at times across Aberdeenshire too. But for most, it's dry and fine out there. Generally clear skies. A bit of mist and low cloud returning to parts of eastern England, and a few fog patches are possible in the south, where temperatures in the countryside could dip down to 3 or 4 Celsius. Most towns and cities, they're starting tomorrow at 10 or 11 Celsius. And most will start tomorrow with plenty of sunshine, and for many it'll just stay that way. We will see again some misty conditions around a few coasts, particularly perhaps East Anglia, east coast of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more cloud moving into the Western Isles through the day. But any early rain across Shetland should clear. For most, it's fine. Sunny spells and warmer than today, 21 to 23, maybe 24 or even 25 in 1 or 2 locations. Another fine day to come on Saturday. Again, the possibility of some mist and low cloud affecting eastern coast. A small chance of 1 or 2 isolated but heavy showers over northern England and southern Scotland. But for many, fine again. And if anything, a little warmer, 24, 25 degrees, a little cooler around some coasts. Goodbye.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Let me start with some of the front pages. Let's do it. We go to the Metro. 5 babies die as cough bug spikes. Jab's plea over the whooping menace. This is the whooping cough issue that apparently is becoming worse and worse. Let's go to the Independent. More Tory MPs want to defect, says Labour, as panic grips the party. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting tells the Independent that he's been approached by Tories reeling from Natalie Elphick's defection. Let's go to the Daily Express. Who'll win the tug-of-war over interest rates? Jeremy Hunt has warned the Bank of England of the delicate balancing act needed to cut interest rates whilst keeping inflation under control. We're going to have a little bit more of that later. The Daily Telegraph. Hunt urges bank not to rush rate cuts. Bailey hints that borrowing costs could fall next month in a potential boost for Rishi Sunak. Here we go. They've already got something on the front of the Telegraph there, but I'll whiz over to the Mail. Worst whooping cough outbreak in 40 years. So that's the same as the Metro. Now, right. I'm going to reintroduce my wonderful panel to the fray. Of course, I am joined by the Telegraph's Alison Pearson. I've also got Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larson. Now, here we go. OK, so breaking tonight. We are finally allowed to talk about it. Sir Keir Starmer will tomorrow launch Labour's plans to tackle the small boat crisis. So it's a major speech on the Kent coast. Starmer is going to say that control of our borders needs graft, not gimmicks, as well as announcing a raft of new measures to supposedly end the tough talk, do nothing culture of the Tories. This will involve, OK, strap yourselves in, new Border Security Command, led by a Border Security Commander, obviously, otherwise that'd be weird, wouldn't it, to take on the criminal smuggling gangs. And how's it going to be funded? A Labour government, they say, will direct £75 million of the allocated year one costs of the Tories' Rwanda plan to fund these new measures. It, of course, comes in the wake of Natalie Elphick, the former Tory MP for Dover, crossing the floor in the House of Commons to join the Labour Party. That was just at PMQs. All right, OK, so I have here in front of me a fuller list of the kind of things that Keir Starmer wants to do. But I'm going to hand over to our resident Labour fanatic here, Matthew Larson, first. So come on, talk us
I get to go first, right?
Talk us through how he's going to smash the gangs.
Well, look, the key point about this is it's about using anti-terrorism legislation and an approach that has worked against terror gangs and terror plots in the past. So it involves hiring hundreds of additional special investigators, which will be split across the agencies that work on this. And the new Border Security Command will be modelled on the Office of Security and Counter-Terrorism, which the last Labour government introduced. Border control and stop and searches will be given expanded powers under the Terrorism Act to ensure enhanced stop and search without the need for suspicion that you've had in the past. So basically, it gives more powers to our frontline law enforcement to tackle the gangs, and it also involves working cross-border. It's paid for not by 75 million taken out of the Rwanda gang, which would actually pay for, I think that would take 30 people to Rwanda, or we can use anti-terror approach to smashing the gangs.
So it's anti-terror laws that are going to smash the gangs. Now, Sean, you were screwing your face up there.
So, stop and search, they'll be here. It's too late. If someone climbs out of a boat...
No, it's about getting the mobile phones off them, Sean.
No, it's too late. They're here. You've just sailed across a very big sea. You will do this with a mobile phone.
But they don't, actually. Weirdly, they don't.
The moment they realise they're being stopped and searched, those phones will be lining the English Channel. That's the first point. The second point, I want to be fair about this. The idea of a more focused border force is correct. It's probably good. But they have to watch it. It doesn't become like the Home Office, too big to handle. The second piece as well, they talk about smashing the gangs. Unless they get support, great support from the source country, it'd be a complete waste of time. Because unless you can get to Mr. Biggs, he doesn't care. He'll just keep going. Yeah. He's not taking a risk. He's sending people over. He's not carrying them over. So it's a very different thing.
So Keir Starmer's plan, which he will unveil tomorrow, includes things like border control stop and searches, which we've mentioned there, expanding powers under the Terrorism Act to ensure enhanced stop and search, personal searches, examinations, seizure of mobile phones and devices. Presumably what he's saying there is we'll be able to more accurately tell.
This is what the Belgians... we made a discussion before. The Belgians have done it because at the moment, when people come, their phones aren't confiscated because there isn't a law under which you can do it, whereas the Belgians do confiscate the phones, and that has had some success in tracing people back further back down the train, which Sean's absolutely right, is what you ultimately need to do.
Sorry, can I just say one last thing?
unless they are prepared to actually send people back, and I don't believe Keir Starmer said anything about that, it won't matter. All it is, you'll know where they came from, great. What are you actually going to do to change that? I want this to work, but it doesn't sound like it's going to work. He said a lot of things, but unless he actually says, we will send people home, then it doesn't matter.
Well, this is an important point. Now, Keir Starmer may elaborate on this tomorrow. We will have to wait and see. But as it currently stands, from what I gather here, they would scrap the deterrent of flying people abroad and removing people. They would, Alison, allow people to... Well, not allow, but people would come to Britain and they would take their phones off them. There's not a lot here that I can see about deporting anyone.
Well, I don't think it sounds all bad, actually. And I think the point which will strike home with a lot of people is that the Rwanda plan is, much of that is pie in the sky. I mean, all of these measures are going to cost about the £75 million allocated for just 1 year, or one tiny portion of the Rwanda plan. And I think using counter-terrorism people, I've often wondered why we didn't have MI5 and MI6 going in and stopping some of these people smugglers, because that must be possible to do that. And also, what we have to admit, Sean, is that the former Ian, someone head of border control, said that it was undermanned. There was no staff. It was absolutely shambolic. So if they can at least tighten that, but the point, Patrick, is surely the Rwanda plan, even if they manage to get people off the ground, has got such a limited scope for taking... they say they can
1% at most.
300 people. We've had 8,500 people since January. So I think...
Here's the point. I'm not trying to tell you the Rwanda plan's brilliant. I'm not trying to tell you that. And I actually want this to work. But the point is, Keir Starmer tomorrow needs to give a figure of how many people it's going to work. Because is this 301 people, or is it 30,000 people? Who knows? He needs to tell us. I do accept that redirecting the money is a good spend of money. That's a good thing to do. Yeah, but what I worry about, this is actually what he's criticised, is a lot of talk and a little action. Okay, you set up a new force, but what do they do? The response to this has to be international. You'll never break these gangs unless you are on their patch.
What he says here...
I agree with you, Sean.
Can I just... And I'll put this to you, Matthew. Yeah. So he says, so we will hire hundreds of new caseworkers for the Home Office, he says, and we'll do it immediately. We will create a new fast-track returns and enforcement unit. We will ensure our courts can process claims quickly, and we will save the taxpayer billions. How is he going to get around the exact same problem we have at the moment, which is that we just can't deport anyone?
Well, one of the problems is not just that we can't deport, because there is an issue in some countries' cases, but what is interesting about what he's going to say tomorrow is he's going to dub what the Tories are doing, the travel lodge amnesty, which is the people who are in hotels across the country, as Alison has both talked about on this sofa and written about, are just basically being stamped because they're not being investigated properly, because you haven't got that fast track to send people back, even if they are countries where you can send them back to legally. Effectively, what the Tories are trying to do is to get the numbers of files down and get people out of hotels, is say people can stay without their cases being looked at properly.
My big concern about this is that, OK, it's all very well and good confiscating people's phones when they arrive here. Fine, I think that just makes sense. I can't really believe we've not been doing that already, to be honest with you, which I think is ridiculous, right? This thing is, we have to restore integrity and rules to our asylum system, says Keir Starmer. We have to clear the backlog. That is the path, the only path to real deterrence. My concern with Alison is, what does clearing the backlog actually really look like? Is it, all right, then, come all, lads, you come in...
It's the opposite of that.
Therein lies a problem. Well, yes, but as Matthew has just said, I'm afraid that under our present administration, what they are doing at the moment is they are clearing the decks as fast as they can. They are emptying those hotels, and they are hiding
I spoke to one yesterday on the roundabout around the corner.
Thousands of people down the back of a sofa, so Rishi could stand up at a given moment and say, we have no backlog of asylum seekers. Yeah, because they're all living in Wolverhampton on our dime. That's what's going to happen. I actually think that what Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick have said all along, until we leave this European Court Convention on Human Rights, we are not going to be able to return people properly to their place of origin.
And that's the real thing. Keir Starmer and that political world have been guilty of fighting the government when they tried to deport people.
He's going to talk tomorrow a lot about using
Why will it be any different when he tries to do it?
it.
He's using his anti-terrorism experience. And actually, one of the things to be on the is there's a serious crime prevention orders which you can do under anti-terrorism legislation, which means that you can ban people from using the internet, etc., which the government won't do.
All right. Well, hey, look, the important thing is, and we cannot deny this, is we appear to be about to have a plan from Labour. Yeah. Right? So there's that. And that we'll be hearing all about this in more...
On the Kent Coast with a new MP.
On the Kent Coast with a new MP, which has gone down incredibly well. Right, OK, now, a high school in Oregon has come under fire for allowing a transgender athlete to take part in races against biological girls. The 10th grader, I mean, you can obviously see who it is. The 10th grader was seen blowing away the competition here in the 200-metre heat. Wow. Striding ahead of the other runners. So there we go. I mean, I'm sorry, but, like, I don't even think they're going at full tilt there, actually. Yeah, I mean, we are a bit over, Alison, so I'll come back to it after the break if that's all right. But, I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? We'll play that clip again shortly. Coming up, should politics be left out of Eurovision after Israel is booed? And now I've just found out, I think Israel has been sent through to the final, so it's good news for Israeli Eurovision. I'm going to be discussing that with my panel as we crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And, OK, yes, I'll have more front pages for you.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
Good evening and welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. I've got more front pages for you now. Let's crack on. Let's go to the Eye. Cummings, Boris and I saved thousands from COVID, but we won't talk again. Johnson's former chief advisor gives first major interview during which he's obviously completely over everything, isn't he? He's moved on. It's a man who's moved on. Let's go to the Guardian. Yeah, there we go. OK, fear and trepidation as 100,000 people flee Rafa bombardment. Starmer pledges to rip up Rwanda scheme. They've also got that on their front page. Just a reminder for you, if you're just joining us, Keir Starmer's Labour Party has unveiled their plan to stop the boats. There's going to be a major announcement and a speech on this tomorrow. Let's go to the Times. Truancy up by a fifth on Fridays, which, given that I'm off tomorrow, I feel like I shouldn't be really commenting on. But Minister blames unacceptable parenting after working from home fuels 50,000 extra absences. And Bank of England Governor raises hopes of lower mortgage rates. There we go. Right, OK, so those are all of your front pages. My wonderful panel are still with me here. Oh, well, apparently I've got the Daily Mirror as well. Sorry, Mirror. Yeah, whooping cough warning. Vaccination plea to families amid fears of biggest outbreak in 40 years. That is, to be fair, the same front page as three other outlets tomorrow. Right, my panel is with me. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Right, now, the Eurovision Song Contest hasn't even kicked off yet, and we're already seeing hostility for one country, Israel. So this isn't a show rehearsal. Now, among cheers, people in the audience made it abundantly clear that they didn't want the Israeli act there.
Free Palestine!
So, yeah, now that singer has been told to stay inside her hotel room as protesters against Israel inclusion in the contest have begun. Greta Thunberg is there, obviously, of course she is. Tonight, Israel singer Eden Golan, though, has qualified for the final on Saturday, and Swedish host broadcaster SVT has said it will not censor the Eurovision audience if there is a repeat of the booing. Yeah, Alison, I mean, OK, so you got booing on stage, for one thing, but then you have got a group of people, including Greta Thunberg, out on the street, essentially barricading an Israeli singer in a hotel room. This is just vile, isn't it?
It's completely vile. Has she saved the planet then, Patrick? Has she changed?
She's moved on. Yeah, she's done it now.
She's moved on now. That's all sorted out. Yeah, this is Eden Golan singing a lovely song, actually, beautiful voice, called Hurricane. She's 20 years old. She's representing her country. She's proud Israeli with lots of fantastic Israeli backing singers and dancers. It's just completely unacceptable. It's bullying, isn't it? They've just become the Jews of the world, Patrick, and they are the Jews, aren't they? So that's you know, anti-Semitism, and I hope she does well.
Interesting, isn't it? Because Greta Thunberg, you know, she's not that young anymore, is she? I don't know what she's now, 19 or so. She's been around for ages. So, but she must know what it's like to be a young woman who's very public, who has received quite a bit of hate, and I think to really be inflicting that on somebody else, I find quite bizarre, Sean.
Look, I look at this whole situation, and to me, it feels like bullying. And Greta bringing her notoriety to this doesn't help the situation. And I think someone should ask her the exact question you've just posed. You know what it's like, or why would you do that? And I think sometimes people risk harming the Palestinian cause with some of these reactions, because you're looking at the Eurovision Song Contest. It's meant to be about unity. You've definitely made it sectarian now. You know, some people won't warm to that. And I think at some point, the whole way that this is playing out, somebody will have to challenge. I'm someone who wants to make sure that no extra deaths in Palestine. Let's stop that now. But the way in which it's going is damaging relationships with countries far beyond Palestine.
I know Eurovision is always political, and usually we joke about it.
Yeah.
Well, the world hates us.
We might not actually come last
and all of that. Yeah, well, yeah. But I think
it's very interesting that Israel's been voted through in the semi-finals by the people of Europe.
Yeah.
So it does give you some hope that that virtue signaling doesn't extend to people at home.
Can you imagine if they were? I mean, it won't happen. But could you imagine the discrepancy between those people out there in the streets and actually people at home? Anyway, right, moving on now. Beloved British actor Hugh Grant. All right, let's just rephrase it. Hugh Grant has criticised Apple's new iPad.
I love Hugh Grant.
Has criticised Apple's new iPad advert, calling it the destruction of the human experience. Is it really that bad, Hugh? Shall we have a look? I think, look, we're basically saying you can fit everything you enjoy in life into one iPad there. But, right, look, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Alison, your greatest Britain, please.
I'm going for an honorary one. It is indeed Eden Golan, the Israeli entry for Eurovision. This fantastic 20-year-old, proudly representing her country, being terrorised in a hotel room by a bunch of nasty virtue signallers. Nil point to them.
Yeah, strong start. Sean?
Mine is Tees Valley's Mayor, Lord Houchin, who was re-elected on the back of delivering so much for his local area. He's really proud of his area. He comes from there, and he's a politician of real passion. I just like the fact that he was able to get re-elected on the back of what he's actually done, not what he's been talking about.
OK, go on, Matthew.
The only Tory who won. Keir Starmer for proposing a serious plan to tackle the boats and smash the gangs and not fail gimmicks like Rishi.
OK, now, just again, I will keep reminding everybody, if you are just joining us, and I have just about got time for this, this was the big breaking news of the night, OK? So Keir Starmer is going to give a talk tomorrow in which he will outline Labour's plan to stop the boats. That includes things like creating a new elite border security command, enforcing additional counter-terror laws as well, confiscating the phones immediately, apparently, of people who come to this country, presumably with a view of finding out what's on those phones and tracking the people smugglers down, creating a new border security commander, hiring hundreds of additional specialist investigators. He wants to clear the backlog, he says, and he will pay for it with, I believe, 75 million quid that would otherwise have been spent on Rwanda. So it's in a nutshell. So that was the news tonight. Right, today's Greatest Britain it's an honorary one. It's Eden Golan, who is the Israeli entrant for the Eurovision, who is currently holed up in a hotel room somewhere because there's a mob outside. Right, Union Jackass, Alison.
Oh, still with Eurovision. Ollie Alexander, the UK's entry, who has really unleashed my inner Mary Whitehouse, Patrick.
I'm worried about this.
This is a disgusting display of young men in underpants doing... I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm not even...
What young men in underpants do?
young men in a bathhouse. Anyway, it's pretty disgusting. It's actually not... He doesn't really sing in tune. A bum note in every song.
There it is. OK, go on, Sean.
My Union Jackass is Wes Streeting for his comments and his rhetoric around Susan Hall, the Tory candidate for Mayor of London. If Labour really are serious about running this country, they've got to move away from this divisive identity politics nonsense. London is a place where so many different races rub together, and he is making terror in communities far beyond politics. He needs to stop.
I think we've got the tweet, have we, of him. So, yeah, look, again, you know, well, I don't need to paraphrase, I can read it. A win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over.
I can guarantee you I'm not a white supremacist. I really can.
Yeah, many things, but we're not white supremacists.
Yeah.
We'll agree on that.
Can you have brown supremacists?
I should have nominated for Jackass all the gay bars that are refusing to show the Eurovision Song Contest as an act of solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Is that happening?
Absolutely. Another one in Edinburgh has just done it. Said it's a. But my actual Union Jackass is your just about colleague, the Green Party's Sian Berry, who a week ago was asking for votes of Londoners, got elected to the London Assembly, and 3 days later resigned so she could go and campaign in Brighton to take over from Caroline Lucas. Talk about taking the mickey of the electorate.
Yeah, no, indeed, and it is a good one. It's not the winner, though. I've gone for Wes Streeting, but there we go. Yes, but very, very close, Matthew. Right, look, thank you very much, everybody. Now, thank you. Really enjoyed this evening. Make sure that you keep it GB News tomorrow, because we're going to have a heck of a lot to go out with. Keir Starmer, hey, you heard it here first, looking like he's announcing a policy, which is fantastic. So there we go. We'll be picking the bones out of that. I am, however, off, and Nana will be sitting in this seat. It's Headliners next, so make sure that you keep it GB News, and until then, keep fighting the good fight.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather updates from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cracking day tomorrow, if you like it fine, warm and sunny. If anything, a little bit warmer than today with light winds thanks to this chunky area of high pressure. Hasn't been fine everywhere today. There has been these weather fronts just trickling across northern Scotland, still bringing some outbreaks of rain, particularly for Caithness, Sutherland and spreading across the Northern Isles. A bit of patchy rain at times across Aberdeenshire too. But for most, it's dry and fine out there. Generally clear skies. A bit of mist and low cloud returning to parts of eastern England, and a few fog patches are possible in the south, where temperatures in the countryside could dip down to 3 or 4 Celsius. Most towns and cities, though, starting tomorrow at 10 or 11 Celsius. And most will start tomorrow with plenty of sunshine, and for many it'll just stay that way. We will see again some misty conditions around a few coasts, particularly perhaps East Anglia, east coast of Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more cloud moving into the Western Isles through the day. But any early rain across Shetland should clear. For most, it's fine. Sunny spells and warmer than today, 21 to 23, maybe 24 or even 25 in 1 or 2 locations. Another fine day to come on Saturday. Again, the possibility of some mist and low cloud affecting eastern coast. A small chance of 1 or 2 isolated but heavy showers over northern England and southern Scotland. But for many, fine again. And if anything, a little warmer, 24, 25 degrees, a little cooler around some coasts. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies. But it's no surprise that the Green fanatics in the Scottish government, where they know how to be fanatics, have had to backtrack on their flagship greenhouse gas reduction target. The SNP has committed to reducing Scotland's CO2 emissions by 75% by 2030. Now, the Climate Change Committee has reviewed its policy and advised that the absurd reduction target is out of reach.
Can we accept the CCC's recent re-articulation that this Parliament's interim 2030 target is out of reach? We must now act to chart a course to 2045.
It is time to recognise the truth that net zero by 2050 is unrealistic and unaffordable. It's time we rid ourselves of this foolish and costly idea that will simply make people cold and poor. We need to prioritise cheap energy for Britain's consumers and for companies, for industry, enabling economic growth that will benefit us all.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Some breaking news. Sir Keir Starmer is set to unveil Labour's plan to tackle the small boats crisis. The Labour leader will launch the strategy tomorrow with a commitment to create a new border security command with hundreds of specialist investigators, officers and prosecutors. The plan would bring in tough counter-terror powers to smash criminal smuggling gangs, which Labour says are undermining Britain's national security. And that news comes as it's been confirmed more than 9,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel in small boats this year. Official figures show 250 people made the journey since Monday, taking the tally for 2024 to almost 8,800. However, GB News can confirm another 3 small boats arrived on Thursday, and all this comes after a Home Office U-turn over the publication of the number of small boat migrants being prevented from making the illegal journey by French police. The Chancellor's welcomed the Bank of England's decision to hold its base rate, saying it's better not to rush into cutting rates. It's been left, the rate, unchanged for a 6th time at 5.25%. Now, Governor Andrew Bailey suggested a cut may be possible as early as June, but says it's by no means a done deal. Jeremy Hunt has urged the bank not to take risks with inflation.
I welcome the fact the Bank of England's obviously thought about this very hard. They take this decision independently, and I would much rather that they waited until they're absolutely sure inflation is on a downward trajectory and rushed into a decision that they had to reverse at a later stage. What we want is sustainably low interest rates. And I think what's encouraging is that the Bank of England governor, for the first time, has expressed real optimism that we're on that path.
Israel's made it through to the final of the Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden amid pro-Palestinian demonstrations protesting against its participation. Thousands of people packed the city's historic market square before a planned march through the city. Israel's entry, Eden Golan, was booed last night, but she got a more mixed reception earlier, with some cheers of support. And FIFA's been threatened with legal action by global football leagues and players' unions if it doesn't reschedule next year's expanded Club World Cup. 32 teams, including Chelsea and Manchester City, will now compete in the competition, which will take place in the US next June. But a letter sent to FIFA President Gianni Infantino says the sport's new schedule is beyond saturation, will cause economic harm for domestic leagues and poses a significant injury risk to players. FIFA has yet to comment. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to our website for more details. Now, it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour, and I'm joined by undercover pro-Palestine activist Josh Howie. He's very undercover. And undercover feminist Cressida Wetton. How are you both? Yeah, I know, it's not quite as perfect, but you're more of a difficult to pin down character than Josh.
Oh, it's good times. You've got a haircut, and you know what else is new?
Yes.
We've got new seats.
Right.
We've got new... People are saying, what's going on GB News? What's going on with the producer? We've got new seats. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We're doing brilliant. You don't get new seats when things aren't going good.
But did anyone know, Josh, that the seats... about the previous seats... Did they know what seats were on previously?
They were terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just so good.
Are you okay, Josh?
I'm just so happy we've been asking for new seats. It's a sign that the gods are looking on us and shining and going, recognising us for our great work.
Yes, it's where the money they're not paying me has gone into the seats, but
it's worth it.
Do you know it is worth it? Do you know what, Josh? That's going to be now in a mainstream media article. Presenter goes mad about seats on GB News. The Metro is going to be all over that.
I can't. I'm going to go viral.
I know. As nothing is that will be a story. How are you, Cressida?
Fine, yeah. I mean, this is very exciting.
You don't care about your seat?
I had a new seat the other day, and do you know what, Josh? I underplayed it. I regret that I didn't.
You cannot... Look, the audience at home don't get it. Because the way this new seat, the way it's cupping my buttocks, it's like, I'm going to be so funny for you tonight because of this seat,
Don't
OK?
talk about your buttocks. Twitter is already...
Seems like a great moment to go to the front pages. So let's do the Daily Mail and worst whooping cough outbreak in 40 years. The Telegraph has Hunt urges banks not to rush rate cuts. The Guardian goes with fear and trepidation as 100,000 people flee Rafah bombardment. The Mirror whooping cough warning. The Times has truancy up by a fifth on Fridays. And finally, the Daily Star. We want to see big pictures of Uranus. If I just said that on my own, it would be a big problem, but it's on the Daily Star, so it's fine. Those are your front pages. And what is on the front of the Times, Josh?
Do you think that what you just said?
Yeah.
Is that recorded?
I have no idea. I missed it.
Do you think the audience heard what you said?
It's funny if they heard it or not, isn't it?
It is funny. Do you want to say what you said again?
I just said nailed it, mate. But I thought it'd be hilarious if they hear it, or if they don't. I took a big risk.
Either way, it was good. It was fun.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
But you laughed at me, so at me, not with me.
With you.
Or was it with? It felt at.
Well, it's his catchphrase, isn't it? He likes saying nailed it.
Nailed it.
People like it, Josh.
No, it's good, mate. Anyway,
big numbers.
The Times, very exciting here. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt are back together, which is amazing.
Are they?
Wow.
Oh, no, that's an old photo. OK. So that's not so great. I thought that...
it's about Falklands veteran.
Oh, man. I thought nature was healing. I thought it was like Brexit was going to be reversed.
You're desperate for good news, aren't you?
This is all good. Oh, well. All right, then. Truancy up by a fifth on Fridays. Yeah. We've had this a lot, these kind of... Since, obviously, COVID and since the government and the opposition showed how flippant they would be with our children's education. then guess what? Then parents went, oh, well, I guess if no one's that bothered, then we will go away for a long weekend.
Right, if nothing matters.
Yeah, if
exactly.
our children's education doesn't matter...
They showed it wasn't important. I absolutely agree with you. So what are you going to do?
But it's not... I mean, it is important, and we should... But that was the example that they gave.
Correct.
It's just human nature, isn't it? It's like when they put us in lockdown, everyone who was in the laptop class went, oh, this is great, I'm going to finally write that novel. And very few people emerged from lockdown with a novel.
That's
a lot of
true.
people had beer bellies, drinking problems, those sort of fun
Yes,
things.
but they did use that exact voice. I like that impression of the sort of classic Guardian Easter. But you know what? I agree on all this. There's one thing I would add, though. Kids are taking time off now for minor ailments. That didn't happen when I was younger. Major ailments, you went in. I remember second year junior school, my mum sent me in. They had to take me out of class. I was literally shaking. Before that was a meme. I was literally shaking.
You're always shaking.
No, I had actual temperature. But my mum was like, go in anyway. You'll get in 2 days, you can have 2 days off. She meant the weekend. Okay, that's what she used to say. But now it's minor ailments.
Well, I once broke my collarbone and my parents just ignored me for the whole dinner party. True story.
That's dark, and I believe that about your childhood.
Yeah.
OK, maybe we should move on that bleak note and do the Guardian question then.
Fear and trepidation as 100,000 people flee Rafah bombardment. So more people are fleeing in Gaza. So UN officials say yesterday, that's where the figure comes from, 100,000. I know sometimes the figures come from Hamas. These are from UN
Well, they're not
officials.
dead or anything like that. They're just saying that 100,000 people fled. They haven't said, by the way, that they fled because they were given leaflets and given telephone calls and said to get out so we can prevent civilian casualties.
Exactly. It's not because Hamas went round and knocked on their doors and said... we don't want you guys to come to any trouble. Do leave.
I was hoping you were going to do a sort of Arabic accent.
Absolutely not, Josh.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? Who would want to be displaced in a war zone? It's horrendous.
Josh, without getting mad, do you agree that this Rafah thing is losing Israel popularity in the world? That it's like a step
I think
too
that
far?
people hate Jews and this is the excuse that they need.
Is there no legitimate case for people who are just concerned? I mean, even the US, Biden...
Yeah, no,
Sunak...
Biden's being pathetic. They're all being pathetic. If anybody could give me a solution of how to defeat Hamas without going into Rafah, I think that's brilliant. And without any civilian casualties in a war that Israel didn't start, then, yeah, say it. That's what no one ever says, is how do you defeat Hamas?